On December 2nd, 2019, Nintendo announced that the next update for Super Mario Maker 2 would include a new mode, Ninji Speedruns. For 1 week, players would race to complete a specially designed course in the fastest time possible, while the titular ninjas would run in the background representing other players' attempts. 2 days later, the update was pushed out and the first Ninji Speedrun began. Over 365,000 players took part in the competition, resulting in one of the most participated speedrun events of all time. In 1 week, the level became wildly optimized over and over again by some of the best players in the game. In this video, we'll take a look at the players, the strats, and the records of Ninja 1 Rolling Snowballs. For a Mario Maker level, Rolling Snowballs was pretty easy, and relatively short. It showcased a couple of new features that had just been added in the 2.0 update, including spikes and pokies, and of course, snowballs. There was also quite a lot of slopes and platforms, creating many different possible paths that could be taken to complete the level. However, we're not going to see any of the bottom half of this level, as it was quickly found that to go fast, you needed to go up. Players had quickly found a direct route where you could hold run and right the entire time, but at this point had no optimizations. All slope sections were slid down the entire way, and after jumps, players just landed wherever they could. The earliest known world record was obtained about 25 minutes after the event took off by metballs. Side note, there's no in-game leaderboard for Ninja other than a rough histogram that is divided by whole second increments, so the only way we knew who had the current world record was if they decided to share it online, usually by using the Nintendo Switch Share feature, which allows players to post clips and screenshots directly to Twitter. Back to the world record. Metballs obtained a world record of 20.022 by following a route that will, for the most part, be the same route used throughout the entire week. You can see that many ninjas were already using this route. But Metballs was able to get world record by using a subtle strategy, never touching any upward inclines. Whether you are running, sliding, or even just jumping off an upward slope, your character will slow down. You can see that many other players' ninjas failed to do this and fell just slightly behind from that loss of momentum. Soon after Metballs' run, the first known sub-20 run was obtained by Suiso Maru with a time of 19.984. There's no video of this run. But 12 minutes after Suiso Maru, the B721 would claim his first world record at 19.911.
Yeah, let's go! Let's go!
The Beast is an experienced player, familiar with a lot of the subtle physics of SMM2 that allow you to move ever so quicker. Except for the first frame spin jump, that didn't actually save any time. The most important speed strat he utilized was slope optimization. It's barely noticeable, but there are slight differences in speed for both slope types, and it's not always faster to slide on every slope. Here's a quick rundown of slope speeds. Slowest of all is sliding on steep. Slightly faster is running on steep. Running on flat is about equal. After that is running on gentle, which is significantly faster than any movement on steep. Fastest of all is sliding on gentle. Most players had just been sliding on entire slopes, whether they were gentle or steep. To move as fast as possible, you had to actually stop and start sliding at the moment a slope changes incline. Once the Beast figured this out, records came easy. Another player actually tied this world record before the Beast improved, but we'll talk about him later. The Beast improved his world record 5 more times in the next 20 minutes. Around this time, runs started to look very similar to each other unless you were watching closely. Most of the time save came from better slope landings. Any time spent in the air that could be spent on a gentle slope was a waste. The same thing applies for any time spent running on a gentle instead of sliding. While the Beast was knocking his time down, a Japanese player named Yu briefly broke his streak by using a simple trick, jumping into the final slope. By jumping off the flat part at just the right time, the player's trajectory would bring them down to the slope sooner than if the player just ran straight off. Because traveling in air is slower than any movement on downward slopes, this small trick was a nice time saver. However, this trick was easy to miss. Frame too early, you bump the corner, throwing your trajectory off and making you land much later. A few frames too late and you could hit the snowball backwards, which would prevent you from running underneath the pokey and kill the run. The Beast used this trick to bring his time down by 22 milliseconds before stopping for the night.
Oh, that was... Yes! Untied!
At the very end of his PB streak, the Beast shared 2 tied world records with Polysaw shortly before Fly SMM got an 8.34. This record seems to have been held for quite a while. Keep in mind, at this point the event had only been active for 2 hours. It was 6 hours after Fly posted their 8.34 that Maru tied it, but now 8.34 was second place. Ninji Speedruns uses a 1-2-2-4 ranking system, meaning that any ties would share the same rank, so we know there must have only been one person ahead of Fly and Maru at this time. This was likely MW, who posted a screenshot of an 8.22 after Maru's 8.34, and shortly after MW's world record came another, an 8.19, this time from that player from before, Yu. Overnight, the record had dropped from 8.34 to 8.19. Where did all this time save come from? MW had only posted a screenshot, and although Yu had often posted clips for most of his runs, they sadly no longer exist. However, we do have a video from Maru who had gotten an 8.26 around this time, and we can actually see Yu and MW's Ninjas just in front. A slightly different route was emerging at the start of the level. Instead of jumping on top of the blocks at the start, you would go below, and time a few precise jumps to reach the top just as before. The advantage of going below came down to acceleration. You see, in the top route, players would jump before they had reached full speed. By going below, you could build all the speed possible before getting into the jumps. As seen here, this saved at least 16 milliseconds, a full frame, but it probably saved even more. So why was this not used earlier? Well, the jumps up the slope were pretty unforgiving, and the first jump occurred on an upward slope, which meant any extra time spent running on it would slow you down significantly. This route change was reset heavy, so it took some time before players were willing to try it out. Amazingly, using this new strategy, Yu held onto the record for nearly 16 hours straight, even though it was still just the first day of the event. Only a couple other players got anywhere near Yu at this point. MW remained in second with his previous world record of 8.22 for almost that entire time. Meanwhile, Yu managed to drop the world record down to 8.15, but then, out of nowhere, it was broken again, this time by a player named KingBoo. About a day and a half after the competition began, KingBoo obtained a massive PB, going from 8.24 to 8.13, and bringing him from 4th to 1st. By now, all world records use a technique called a corner boost off the corner of this brick block. By crouch jumping into the corner at just the right moment, the players push forward a tiny amount. In some cases, you can see the player suddenly blip forwards. However, the time save from corner boost isn't consistent across all levels, ranging anywhere from a full frame of time save to only a couple of milliseconds. For rolling snowballs, the corner boost was hardly visible, so it was probably the latter. Still, with the world records this close, every time save mattered. The run was now looking to be nearing perfection. Maru and then Yu both got 8.13, and so there was a 3-way tie for first place. Then Yu finally managed to break 8.13, but just by 2 milliseconds, bringing the world record to 8.11. Not long after, Shino tied that world record. There just didn't seem to be that much time for improvement left. So despite having his streak broken, he was quickly back on top, or so it seemed. Just when it looked like Yu was once again comfortably leading the pack, he found himself in second. And this time, it wasn't KingBoo who had caught up. A Twitter user named Sakyo Lucky Milk had obtained an 8.06, a 5 millisecond jump which seemed nearly impossible with the current strats. But Sakyo was doing something new. It turns out, the slopes were not yet utilized to their fullest. Sakyo posted 2 clips showing a couple of gentle slopes that everyone else had so far just been running on. He was sliding on these, and then slide canceling as soon as they ended. A pretty clever way to save some precious time. This was all that was needed for sub 800 to become real, and it was now a race to see who could get it first. Turns out, pulling off a run with all the best strats was not easy. Between both pairs of gentle slopes was a steep slope. Sliding on steep slopes was the absolute slowest way to move, so if you slide cancel just 1 frame too late, or begin a slide just 1 frame too early, your run is basically over. To put the difficulty of the run into perspective, only 5 players have ever beat Sakyo's 8.06. The first to do so was Yu, who tied the 806, then just minutes after broke it and improved the world record down to 804. Once again, the record was on the brink of perfection. It stuck for 16 hours, just as Yu had done before. And just like before, KingBoo was there to finally smash it. For the second time, KingBoo came right back and knocked the record all the way down to a 19.8 flat. At this point, not only was it hard to see where any time was lost in the run, it was hard to tell runs apart. The movements were precise down to the frame, for almost the entire 20 seconds that it took to complete the level. Just like before, Yu was able to catch up. The two players were tied for first once again, this time only 1 millisecond away from an incredible milestone. It literally couldn't get any closer than this. Who was going to be the one to break it first? That's when Yu did it. Yu beat the level in under 19.8 before anyone else in the world. What followed was a huge outpouring of congratulations from both the Japanese and Western communities. At this time, Yu was not only at the top of the charts for Ninji, he was also the highest ranked player in Versus mode. He was a Mario Maker god. Unfortunately, the video of this run was removed from the internet after Yu deleted all his socials later that month. But the competition wasn't over yet. In fact, it wasn't even halfway over at this point. There were still 3 days left, and players were going to fight to be king of the hill until the last minute. It's also worth mentioning that no one really knew who was going to receive the gold stars that Nintendo had shown off in the trailer. Was it only for the top 1000, top 10, first place? In the end, it turned out the gold stars were given to anyone with a time below 21 seconds, totaling about 70,000 players. But at the time, the only guaranteed way of getting them was to be the champ. It was enough incentive to keep players grinding for perfection. Pulling off the seemingly impossible once again, Yu broke his own record just 1 day after the last, with a 797. It's hard to find a single fault in this run. Every jump, slide, and slide cancel looks like it happens at the best possible moment it could. This was it. Rolling Snowballs completed in the fastest way possible. When KingBoo managed to tie the 797 just hours before the end of the event, it solidified the time as essentially perfect. Even watching the two runs overlapped, it appears that the same movements are done at the same exact moments. But is it perfect? It doesn't seem possible that a speedrun could be completely optimized within a week. Likely there's still some indiscernible improvement that can be made somewhere. While Rolling Snowballs had over 365,000 people attempt to run, interest quickly died after it ended when the ranks became permanent. As of the posting of this video, still no one has beaten 797. Because there are no official leaderboards for Ninji Speedruns, we often don't know who holds the world record or even what the fastest time is. So I made an unofficial leaderboard to keep track of the top 100 runners for each of the Ninjas, starting all the way back at Rolling Snowballs. If you know of anything missing from it and have some sort of proof, please submit to the Google form or in the Ninji Discord. I've left links for these as well as a link to the leaderboard in the description if you're interested. Thanks for watching.